Hey guys, tonight we weave beneath the damp fog drifting off the Thames and wander candlelit lanes where every gas lamp flickers like it's trading gossip about your footsteps. You can practically taste chimney soot on the back of your tongue, feel the drizzle prickling your coat, and hear carriage wheels hissing across puddles that never quite dry. If you actually tried keeping pace with Victorian London, dodging hansom cabs, sidestepping coal carts and vaulting slippery rooftops, you probably won't survive this postal obstacle course. Fortunately, I'm the one doing the walking while you do the relaxing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Pop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where our legion of night owls tune in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken on a sooty spring morning, rubbing grit from your eyelashes while coal barges groan along the river. The city hums like an overwound clock, every tick echoed by hoofbeats, and every tock by a costermonger hawking bruised apples. A printed flyer, marvel of modern post, demonstration at noon, flutters against your boot. It smells of fresh ink and yesterday's fish and chip grease. Victorian marketing is nothing if not resourceful. The address leads you to a lecture hall above a pawnbroker's shop, where peeling wallpaper curls like old stamps. Inside, a curious crowd clusters around Horatio Garraway, a lanky inventor whose moustache is waxed to dagger points. He wears the manic grin of a man balanced perfectly between genius and bankruptcy, quite possibly both. Garraway taps a pointer against a chalkboard sketch of a cat wearing a satchel. "Gentlefolk," he declares, voice echoing against crack plaster. "London's letters shall soon ride on paws." With theatrical flourish, he lifts the lid of a wicker basket. A ginger tabby pops out, sporting a miniature mailbag, oil-tanned leather, brass clasp, the feline accessory you never knew you needed. The audience titters. One matron flutters her fan, uncertain whether she's witnessing progress or nonsense. Garraway's theory sounds straightforward. Train city cats to bound across rooftops, bypass choking traffic, and deliver urgent messages faster than any foot courier. You admire his optimism and suspect his tailor has already been paid in advance. Across the aisle, a bespectacled journalist scribbles notes. He leans over and whispers, "Historians still argue whether Garraway pinched the idea from a Belgian village or dreamed it up over gin." You nod sagely, pretending you're not just here for the feline fashion show. Garraway claps once. 2 assistants unlatch tiny gates, and 6 cats burst into the rafters, scattering like marbles on a tilted table. One disappears behind velvet curtains. Another perches atop a gas lamp, tail flicking with royal disdain. For the grand proof, a volunteer scribbles a note, "Send crumpets for tea," folds it small and tucks it into the ginger's pouch. Garraway opens a window, points to a distant townhouse roof, and gives the launch signal. The cat leaps, clears the sill, then immediately decides the neighbouring chimney pot is prime sunbathing real estate. 10 minutes slide by. A heckler hollers, "Cats always deliver, when they feel like it," scoring joke 2 and scattered applause. Determined to witness glory, you clamber onto the roof yourself. Victorian tiles are slick, so naturally your boots choose this moment to audition for an ice skating routine. Arms pinwheeling, you land in a heap of rain-soaked laundry. At least the sheets smell faintly of lavender, a rare scent in London air. From below, a scullery maid calls, "Mind my knickers, sir." Joke 3. Smartly delivered, unlike the letter still lounging in that chimney. By afternoon, the cat has accomplished nothing except an enviable nap. Garraway recalibrates, insisting this first attempt merely measures baseline rooftop enthusiasm. You suspect feline enthusiasm hovers somewhere between indifference and lunchtime. Still, the concept intrigues you. Cats already serve as London's unofficial night watch, patrolling alleys for rats the size of terriers. Why not recruit them as couriers? You picture tiny brass nameplates, engraved with titles like Sir Whiskers, Express Division, jingling as they sprint across the skyline. Mainstream fact interlude. By the 1860s, the British General Post Office processed nearly 2 billion letters annually. So many that delivery boys sometimes made a dozen trips to the same household on Christmas Eve. Any innovation, even one with whiskers, could ease that mountain of correspondence. Quirky tidbit to tuck under your pillow. Some Victorian families fitted beloved cats with tiny bells, not only to warn songbirds, but also to help chimney sweeps locate pets trapped in flues. Imagine pairing that cheerful chime with a mailbag. The entire city might literally ring with correspondence. Stepping outside to take the public temperature, you meet an elderly postman, coat faded to brick pink. He confides he would gladly trade his £40 satchel for a squadron of striped tabbies, less backache, more purrs. Yet he wonders whether patrons will entrust love letters to creatures with a documented talent for shredding curtains out of spite. Evening settles like velvet smoke. Crossing Blackfriars Bridge, you watch packet boats ferry burlap mailbags toward the channel. Newly installed sodium lamps cast sickly halos on the water. Progress rarely flatters the night. A final chuckle escapes when you spot a street urchin tying a message to a random alley cat with string and a meat pie bribe. The cat, naturally, steals the pie and bolts, proving the pay scale needs revision. Gas lamps hiss. Your eyelids lower to half-mast. Dawn creeps over the channel like a half-awake cat stretching across a windowsill. And before you notice the time, a paddle steamer named Serendipity is chugging you toward Belgium. Its brass funnels cough coal-smelling sighs and gulls circle overhead, demanding breakfast royalties in stale crusts. You lean on the rail, pockets still sandy with London chimney grit, while a deckhand polishes a life preserver that reads, "Property of Liège Feline Post. Return if found. Especially you, Whiskers." Apparently the Belgians have no intention of losing either their cats or their sense of humour. Within hours you step onto the cobbled quay of Liège, a riverside city famed for armaments, waffles and, as you're about to learn, ambitious postal experiments featuring 37 house cats. A brisk spring wind fills your lungs with the scent of lilac and ironworks. Somewhere a church bell marks 10 o'clock, but the square outside the post office rings with a different music. Meows layered over polite applause, like an orchestra tuning to the world's least disciplined conductor. A semicircle of spectators, ladies in ribboned bonnets, mustachioed merchants, two monks clutching notebooks, face a raised platform. On it stands Postmaster René Delacroix, whose beard is so meticulously waxed that you wonder if Belgian law mandates such symmetry. He brandishes a parchment, strategic timeline of kitty couriers, inked with times that assume cats read schedules. You arch an eyebrow, remembering Garraway's baseline rooftop enthusiasm, and suspecting René may soon share that baseline, perhaps several rooftops lower. Beside him, wicker carriers rock gently as feline occupants test escape routes. Each cat wears a tiny oilskin mailbag, dyed burgundy and stamped with a golden lion rampant. Talk about Postal Fashion Week. René addresses the crowd in rolling French, which a sprightly interpreter renders, "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed felinophiles, behold the dawn of agile correspondence." A ripple of claps flutters through the audience. One of the monks crosses himself, either invoking divine blessing or apologizing in advance. René's plan is daring yet simple. Release all 37 cats at once from different city districts, each laden with practice letters, then time how quickly they return home. Timing charts dangle from clipboards like dangling toys in front of kittens, perhaps prophetic. You pass a table where an assistant ladles sardine broth into thimble-sized bowls, the official recovery treat. Joke 1 writes itself. Nothing motivates a Belgian cat like the promise of fish-flavoured espresso. The whistle blows, wicker doors unlatch, and instant pandemonium erupts. Cats burst forth in multicoloured comets, tabbies, tortoise shells, regal white Persians, all sprinting in seemingly purposeful directions. The crowd gasps, cheers. You jog after a ginger Tom named Bertrand. He leaps a canal gap you wouldn't brave on a dare, landing with gymnastic disdain. then vanishes between bakeries, exhaling warm yeast. You glimpse him again atop a butcher's awning, where strings of sausages swing like party bunting. Bertrand pauses, torn between duty and dinner. You mutter encouragement under your breath, though honestly, you'd choose the sausages too. That's joke 2, self-deprecation seasoned with appetite. In 1876, Liège truly conducted this feline postal trial. Contemporary newspapers reported that the fastest cat returned in less than 5 hours, while the slowest sauntered home the next morning, proving cats respect neither clocks nor human expectations. Back at Central Command, clerks pencil frantic updates onto chalkboards shaped like fish bones. René wipes sweat from his brow as runners dash in to declare arrival times. Félicie, 4 hours 15. Marcel, 6 hours flat, but missing letter. Each triumphant checkmark is followed by nervous footnotes about letters damp with canal water or sprinkled with inexplicable sawdust. Historians still argue whether these mishaps prove feline unreliability or simply highlight poor envelope craftsmanship. A quirky tidbit surfaces when you overhear a junior clerk recounting how one cat delivered its letter to the wrong house, triggering an impromptu tea invitation from a lonely widow who declared, "Any messenger so fluffy is welcome here." The widow allegedly wrote back thanking the post office for delightful four-legged companionship and requesting her groceries be sent the same way. Somewhere, Garraway would applaud the brand loyalty. René calls for a midday progress conference. He unfurls a map dotted with coloured pins, red for early finishers, blue for strays still roaming, black for ominous unknowns. A single black pin sits atop a district labelled Cité Ardente. Someone whispers rumours of a fish market there. You recall Bertrand's conflicted gaze. Joke 3 arrives on schedule. Leave a hungry cat in a fish district, and your correspondence might come back seasoned with dill. As afternoon shadows lengthen, you detour into a quiet alley where cobbles shine like dark licorice. A soot-grey kitten, clearly not on the official roster, strolls up, tail kinked in a question mark. You crouch, scratch behind its ears, and notice scraps of twine suggesting someone once tied a miniature mailbag. Perhaps deserters exist even in postal armies. You fish a crumb of waffle from your coat, field rations obviously, and bribe the deserter to act as scout. It trots ahead, winding through courtyards humming with laundry lines, leading you to a sun-bleached stone archway, where, surprise, Bertrand lounges atop a fish crate, licking scales from his whiskers. He eyes you, utterly. By sunset, 27 of the original 37 have reported home. René tallies results while chewing a licorice root to calm nerves. Fastest record, 4 hours exactly, set by a svelte black cat named Lisette. Slowest so far, still missing, last seen detouring into a brewery's malt cellar. If she returns with a slight wobble, no one will judge. A sudden hush falls over the crowd as a carriage rolls up bearing His Grace the Provincial Governor. He steps out, monocle gleaming, and asks dryly whether cats accept overtime pay in cream. Nervous laughter flutters. René assures him efficiency will improve. The governor scans the report, arching an eyebrow at the fish-soaked envelope evidence. "Innovative," he declares, "if somewhat fragrant." You imagine future governmental memos scented like haddock. Civil servants may never forgive this day. Night envelops Liège in golden lamplight. Cafes spill accordion tunes onto the street, and steam curls from iron grates. You stroll riverward, reflecting on lessons learned. Compared with London's rooftop fiasco, Belgian organisation feels disciplined. Yet the felines remain resolutely feline. Even with oilskin mailbags, they obey only appetites and whims. Still, you sense potential. Perhaps with refined training, smoked herring incentives say, cats could master urban delivery in ways pigeons or pony carts cannot. As you cross a footbridge, you look down at rippling reflections of lanterns and catch movement. A cat silhouette darting along the parapet, tiny satchel bouncing. Whether she reaches home tonight or detours through waffle heaven is anyone's guess. But the sight comforts you. It proves curiosity might carry the mail just far enough. And curiosity, unlike hope, has 9 lives. Back over the channel, you sail beneath a moon that flickers like a gas lamp caught between gusts. And by the time dawn rubs sleep from London's bricks, you are trudging toward the abandoned malt warehouse that Horatio Garraway has proudly rechristened the Feline Postal Training Academy. The sign, painted in thick tar, still smells like last night's lamp black, and a stray stroke drips in a way that makes the whole venture look permanently nervous. Inside, the air is part sawdust, part sardine smokehouse. Your stomach recognizes breakfast, even while your brain questions every career decision that has led you here. Garraway greets you, wearing a coachman's whistle, a tweed waistcoat, and the expression of a man who has finally captured lightning in a jam jar. "Splendid timing," he says, pressing a clipboard into your hands. "Today we begin structured conditioning." You glance down to discover a schedule divided into absurdly optimistic blocks. 6 a.m, rally call, 6:05, mindfulness grooming, 6:10, first herrings. If nothing else, punctuality will be tested more severely than the cats. The warehouse floor has been transformed into a miniature city, wooden rooftops connected by planks, drain pipes fashioned from stovepipe elbows, and scaled-down chimneys fashioned from flower pots. It looks like a toy maker's fever dream. You tap one of the planks. It wobbles ominously because authenticity apparently includes structural uncertainty. Along the starting line, 15 feline recruits lounge on plush cushions. Each wears a fresh collar, embroidered with a number, and the motto, Per catus expressus. Through the cat, delivered. Their pupils narrow at the sight of a burlap sack marked smoked herrings. Handle with awe. One orange tabby licks his lips so loudly you swear it echoes. Joke 1 settles in with the smoky aroma. Clearly the cats are motivated, just not by postage. Garraway produces a long wooden pointer, an absurd prop that nevertheless commands silence, and explains the methodology. The idea is to lure each cat along the rooftop maze by placing tiny flakes of smoked herring at strategic intervals, gradually increasing the gap between treats until, in theory, they learn to focus on the final destination rather than each morsel along the way. You nod, pretending you have not already spotted the flaw. Cats are much better at training humans to offer fish than at skipping snacks for efficiency. The whistle shrills. Assistants in canvas aprons scatter across the maze, sprinkling herring like priests scattering incense. The cats rise in a chorus of rustling whiskers. Number 3, a mink grey queen named Ethel, launches forward, tail high, paws silent. She clears the first gap, devours her treat, and blinks back a look of existential bliss. Number 7, a stout ginger christened Barnabas, decides existential bliss is overrated and simply breaks formation to follow his nose toward the central herring bucket. The entire back row joins him. Within 30 seconds, the operation resembles a seafood riot, and Garraway's pointer droops like a wilting dandelion. Mainstream fact interlude. By the late 19th century, Britain had over 2,500 officially licensed letter carriers, human, alas, in London alone, each expected to walk more than 16 miles per day. No wonder dreamers hunted for shortcuts with paws and wings. Garraway calls for Plan B, moving the herring incentive to the end platform only. Assistants sweep rogue flakes into tin dustpans while the cats look betrayed, an expression cats have perfected over thousands of years of pretending to be domesticated. You volunteer to reset the course, placing a single glistening fillet on a brass saucer beneath a small bell. The idea is Pavlovian, though no one here has yet read Pavlov. The whistle pierces again. This time Ethel advances with measured grace, ignoring the barren planks until she reaches the bell. She noses it chimes, and several cats stampede forward in panic, assuming the herring has exploded. Barnabas, meanwhile, tests the structural soundness of a flower pot chimney by rolling inside it for an impromptu nap. You scribble Barnabas, structural stress test specialist, on the clipboard and award him full points for comedic timing. Joke 2 accomplished. Historians still argue whether Garraway invented the bell and reward system in isolation, or drew inspiration from continental pigeon fanciers who used whistles to summon their birds. The convergence of ideas around animal signalling in the 1870s borders on telepathy, or perhaps everyone shared the same nagging backache from hauling letters by hand. As morning stretches into noon, progress is, charitably, incremental. 3 cats now traverse half the course before succumbing to grooming breaks. One reaches the final platform, sniffs the mirror-polished saucer, and decides the reflection of her own whiskers is more interesting than fish. You watch her paw at the saucer, entranced by self-admiration, and wonder if vanity might be weaponized in future training. Quirky tidbit alert. A Victorian children's periodical once published step-by-step instructions for building a cat telegraph, which involved fastening messages to collars and luring the household cat between rooms with buttered toast. Reviews were mixed. Toast was consistently eaten before delivery. The article, however, fuels Garraway's brainstorming. Perhaps toasted breadcrumbs could mark the path between rooftops. You politely refrain from mentioning that feline crumbs typically disappear faster than Victorian fog. After a merciful tea break, strong Assam with a side of kippers, because apparent theme, you return to find Garraway unveiling miniature mailbags lined with velvet. Comfort is key, he insists, loading each with a stamped card addressed to an honorary recipient, to the Right Honourable Lord Mauser of Kensington Attic. Joke 3 lands as you imagine aristocratic mice trembling before a feline courier in velvet. Round 2 commences with unexpected discipline, whether because the cats grow accustomed to the layout or because they sense tea time has ended. 4 navigate rooftops in near textbook fashion. They leap, pause, glance back for applause, and resume. At the final bell, Ethel again arrives first, plops her mailbag onto the saucer, and meows with a bass note that resonates through dusty rafters like a church organ's low chord. Garraway nearly weeps, declaring her the Florence Nighting cat of the Postal Service. You mark her name with a star so flamboyant it dents the paper. To cement the lesson, you and the assistants rearrange planks into sharper zigzags, widening gaps, raising the stakes, literally. Barnabas attempts one jump, misjudges, and ends up flailing mid-air before landing in a hay bale, positioned as a safety net. He emerges with straw stuck to his fur and an expression that claims it was all part of the plan. In debrief, Garraway coins the term adaptive route testing, which is a splendid way to describe cats doing whatever they want. By late afternoon, rain drums softly on the warehouse's tin roof. The cats, spent and fish-fatigued, sprawl across cushions like furry punctuation marks, occasionally twitching whiskers in dreams of unlimited sardines. Garraway drafts a glowing report to the General Post Office, emphasising breakthroughs in motivational architecture and downplaying the herrings that still decorate a few hidden corners like aquatic confetti. You help gather mailbags, brushing velvet smooth, and feel an odd, warm pride. If progress is measured in moments of grace amid chaos, today has been a landmark. Street lamps hiss awake as you step outside. The city smells of wet stone and rosin from violinists warming up in pubs. You tuck Ethel's performance card inside your coat, a souvenir of improbable hope. Somewhere out there, Belgian cats are still wandering fish markets. Somewhere ahead, rockets and pigeons await their moments. Darkness tiptoes across the rooftops, while lamplighters in bowler hats hiss kerosene into glass globes, turning the city into a chessboard of warm amber squares. Garraway calls this the Twilight Proving Run, though you suspect he mostly wants an excuse to wear his new waxed cotton greatcoat that squeaks like an indignant marmoset every time he moves, earned before the cats even clock in. Ethel, Barnabas, and 10 of their whiskered classmates line the lead gutter, tiny mailbags cinched, tails flicking like semaphore flags. Each pouch contains an honest-to-goodness letter stamped urgent, matchmaking invitations, overdue invoices, and one unsigned love note fragranced with lavender water that now has every Tom acting faintly lovesick. The signal is simple. You strike a pocket watch 3 times against a chimney pot. Clang, clang, clang. And the feline fleet springs forward. Ethel launches first, silhouette slicing the gaslit haze, followed by Barnabas, whose landing thumps loud enough to rattle loose tiles. You and Garraway jog along the alley below, heads tilted, tracking their progress by the scratch of claws and occasional clonk of dislodged slates. Somewhere behind, an apprentice drags a sack of emergency herrings, just in case morale requires edible bribery. Within minutes, the plan unravels in glorious Victorian fashion. A flock of sparrows bursts from a fig tree trained up an attic wall, and half the cats forget postal duty entirely. They streak after the birds, scattering feathers and faith in equal measure. Barnabas overshoots a landing, skids into a gutter overflowing from the earlier rain, and reclines, as though he's discovered London's first rooftop spa. You tick his name on the clipboard with a note, investigating hydrotherapy. Down at street level, you dodge lamplighters and a disgruntled night soil cart to reach the Spotted Stoat pub, the appointed endpoint for 3 cats carrying bar tabs and receipts. Only one arrives, Miss Tabitha, striped as a barley sugar twist, dropping her pouch squarely at the landlord's boots. Cheers erupt. Someone offers her a saucer of porter, which she sniffs and haughtily declines. Moments later, an orange blur streaks in, but it's Barnabas, soaked, shedding gutter water like a portable rain cloud. His mailbag drips ink, the love letter now dissolving into avant-garde poetry. The landlord reads the blur of violet smudge and shrugs. Still more romantic than half the fellows here? With a round of laughter and one resigned groan from a chap whose courting prospects just evaporated. Mainstream fact for credibility. Victorian pubs often served as unofficial postal drop points after normal sorting offices closed. The last collection bell rang at 8 p.m, so landlords earned pennies holding letters overnight for the morning run. Tonight, you watch that tradition collide with mewing chaos. Up on the ridge tiles, Ethel stays mission true. She leaps a 6-foot gap, tail windmilling for balance, then disappears behind a hostelry sign shaped like a brass badger. You sprint around the corner, nearly collide with a chimney sweep finishing late, and spot her in a dormer window, generously propped open by a curious 8-year-old. Ethel drops the invoice inside with regal aplomb and accepts a sardine reward produced from the boy's coat pocket. Apparently word spreads fast among London children about free cat shows. Historians still argue whether these rooftop trials influenced the post office's later decision to widen letter drops below street level, but the timing is suspiciously convenient. After tonight, no one wants loose envelopes wafting down like bureaucratic confetti. The lavender-scented love note, meanwhile, has been misdelivered to the Pig and Thistle, a rival pub 3 streets east. You learn this when a tipsy patron roars from an upstairs sash window, waving the damp missive at the moon and declaring undying affection for a mystery angel of Shoreditch. You and Garraway exchange glances. Damage control time. Scaling an iron fire escape that rattles with every step, you retrieve Barnabas, still sopping, and the offensively fragrant mailbag. Apologies are poured along with another round of porter, because diplomacy tastes better, foamy. Quirky tidbit drifts in with midnight fog. Some 19th century Londoners swore that cats could navigate rooftops better on cloudy nights, thanks to residual lantern soot coating their whiskers, providing extra sensory input. Pseudoscience? Absolutely. But tonight, watching Ethel tap her whiskers against chimney bricks like a surveyor with a walking stick, you half believe it. Back on task, you fan out toward Limehouse Basin, where 3 fishmongers have pooled shillings to test feline freight. Unfortunately, the route crosses the umbrella shop whose owner breeds carrier pigeons. The birds, offended by this ground-based competition, dive-bomb the cats. Ethel hisses, stands her ground, but 2 younger recruits bolt, mailbags dangling like threatening pendulums. One falls into a laundry cart, reforming Victorian petticoats into avant-garde art. The other slips into an open attic window and decides white lace is an acceptable runway. That will require apologies and starch. Tomorrow, by 2 in the morning, returns trickle in. You and Garraway tally results under a street lamp that sputters each time wind gusts. Out of 12 launched cats, 9 deliveries verified, 2 letters partially dissolved, 1 still outstanding. Considering the sparrow ambush and pigeon vendetta, Garraway calls the evening encouraging. He produces a rumpled notebook titled Lessons in Aerodynamic Treat Placement and adds tonight's findings, mainly keep aerial routes clear of rival fauna. You pen personal notes, success factors, Ethel's discipline, children's sardine stash, pubs appreciative of novelty. Hazards, gutters doubling as feline hot tubs, romantic ink susceptible to drizzle, competitive pigeons with attitude. Something about the list makes you smile. Maybe progress in any century is simply cataloguing fresh absurdities until the useful patterns remain. Sleepy silence cloaks the rooftops as the city fires die down. You escort the feline squad back to the warehouse dormitory, where straw-filled crates nestle against copper hot water pumps. Barnabas shakes himself dry, flops onto his cushion, and begins snoring with the steady rattle of a hand-cranked mimeograph. Ethel circles once, tucks her nose under a velvet mailbag, and dreams, you hope, of flawless leaps and applause that never end. Outside, bakery ovens exhale warm sourdough perfume, promising breakfast to anyone still awake. You linger at the door, watching the ink-blue horizon pale toward early dawn. Tonight you've witnessed chaos on rooftops, sparrow chases, gutter naps, parcels delivered to the wrong pubs, yet each mishap adds a brushstroke to a larger experiment. Perhaps the perfect courier won't have whiskers, but until electricity hums cables into every home, cats still hold tickets to the future in their paws. You pocket the salvaged lavender letter. Maybe tomorrow you'll find its rightful recipient. Or maybe you'll keep it as proof that even soggy affection can reach someone eventually. You scarcely manage a taproom nap before Garraway shoves a parchment map against your eyelids and whispers, "Time to go below." The phrase feels ominous. Victorian sewage famously doubles as urban legend, but he points instead to a discreet doorway on Holborn Viaduct where two uniformed clerks stand guard beside a brass lever. The plaque reads General Post Office, Pneumatic Dispatch, Authorised personnel only. Authorised? Naturally, you assume that means adventurers who haven't slept, so you follow. The stairwell spirals into a humming underworld, lit by guttering gas mantles. Pipes, wide as carriage wheels, snake along brick arches, each embossed with serial numbers and tiny arrows that remind you of treasure maps. Steam sighs through relief valves, like a dragon practicing quiet breathing techniques. Garraway pats the metal lovingly and says, "Nothing warms the heart like industrial tubing." You suggest blanket salesman would disagree. At the dispatch platform, a young engineer named Miss Ada Finch explains the procedure. "We load the mail capsules here," she says, tapping a steel cylinder no bigger than a loaf of bread. Compressed air propels them to the district office in 64 seconds, barring detours. She winks, as though detours are half the fun. You note her grease-streaked spectacles, a practical fashion statement you could grow to admire. Mainstream historical fact glides in with the hiss of intake pumps. London's pneumatic mail network began trials in 1853, and by the 1870s, its 6-mile lattice could shuttle 35,000 messages daily, provided nothing got jammed or wandered off onto the wrong spur. Ada invites you to place a postcard in the capsule. You scrawl, "Dear insomnia friends, wish you were here, but not literally," date it, and seal the hatch. She slides the capsule into a brass barrel, secures a velvet washer, then pulls a lever. Thump! The air cannon fires. A whoosh echoes down the tunnel like a rushed lullaby. A pressure gauge flutters, settling at 15 pounds per square inch. Just enough oomph to propel news without flattening strawberries, should anyone attempt fruit postage. Garraway checks his pocket watch. You mentally hum God Save the Queen twice, 64 beats, before a distant clang announces arrival. Success! Except, moments later, another clang returns, and a second capsule pops out, whacking Garraway's shin. Ada frowns. "Double dispatch again, sorry, we're testing a diverter valve that still thinks it's a boomerang." She attaches a crimson ribbon to the faulty tube, scribbles "Fix me" on a tag, and sends it off for maintenance via hand trolley. You wander deeper, following a corridor where smaller side pipes branch off like stubborn ivy. Ada recounts incidents that read like bedtime fables. One morning, pressure fluctuations sent a capsule bursting through a hatmaker's storeroom, peppering top hats with cancellation stamps. Another evening, steam condensing in the line deposited a shower of damp telegrams into a lady's dress boutique, causing panic when crimson ink bled across ivory lace. The post office paid compensation and purchased the lace for royal envelopes. Quirky tidbit, elegantly delivered. Ahead, a heavy oak door squeals open to reveal Station B, tea room for tube tenders, naturally. Porcelain cups tremble each time a capsule whizzes overhead, creating Morse code clinks. You sip strong Darjeeling, note the flavour of iron filings, and decide it pairs nicely with insomnia. On a chalkboard, someone has tallied capsule record. Fastest, 58 seconds, tea incentive. Slowest, 2 hours 15 minutes, ferret interference. You raise an eyebrow, Ada shrugs. The ferret belonged to an engineer, escaped and refused to exit the pipe until bribed with a pork pie. Historians still argue whether that tale exaggerates or if the ferret truly earned an honorary badge. Meal break over, Ada leads you to the pressure engine room. Pistons slide in hypnotic rhythm, metallic lullabies rocking your senses. She hands you a stethoscope and invites you to listen to the male breathing. Pressed against the pipe, you hear a thrum like distant thunder, layered with the faint rattle of paper. The sound relaxes you more effectively than any lullaby, proof that even bureaucracy can sing. Suddenly a warning bell rings. 2 short, 1 long. Ada curses softly, PG-13, thank you, and sprints toward a junction called Wardrobe Spur. You follow, coat flapping, heart quickening in sync with the bell. A jam has blocked the line, threatening backlog nightmares. She flips open a brass hatch. Letters tumble out like startled doves. Among them falls your earlier postcard, edges singed where friction heated the capsule. You rescue it, amused that your own insomnia greeting has survived a sauna. Garraway peers over your shoulder and quips, "First-class service, we roast your correspondence for free." Ada produces a 3-foot steel rod, the pneumatic equivalent of a shoehorn, and prods the blockage until the capsule pops free with a hiss. Steam whooshes, pressure stabilizes, and another bell signals crisis averted. She wipes sweat with her sleeve and grins. We call that the Victorian plunger. Plumbers have nothing on us. Mainstream fact, part 2. The pneumatic system's creators predicted it would eventually carry parcels, and even passengers. In 1864, a demonstration launched a fully grown man through a 9-foot diameter tube in New York. Whether London ever attempted the same is unclear. Insurance underwriters likely fainted at the proposal. Back on the main platform, Ada reels off improvements. Leather washers to reduce friction, glycerin oilers, directional flaps named after birds. She tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear and confides dreams of expanding lines to Manchester. You realise inventors are perpetual sleepwalkers, riding currents of hope and pressurised air. You and Garraway ascend the stairs just as dawn dusts rooftops with pewter light. Carriage wheels clatter across wet cobbles. Above, Ethel prowls a parapet, proof that surface mail still prowls too. The pneumatic hum follows beneath your boots, like a friendly ghost, whispering, "Post is moving, always moving." Outside the dispatch entrance, a milliner dashes past, clutching a hatbox stamped "Fragile, Pneumatic Return." You catch her eye. She blushes and admits the post office is refunding her ruined lace. She doesn't mind, she says, because the capsule fuss tickled upper-crust boredom. Progress, it seems, is tolerated when it supplies dinner party anecdotes. Garraway clasps Ada's greased hand in farewell and promises to send her a cat-carried letter once the rooftop squadmaster's sparrow avoidance. She laughs, pockets a steel washer as souvenir, and disappears into steam like a character exiting stage left. You watch the door close, aware you've just witnessed pipes breathe life into an empire's whispers. The street smells of wet slate and new possibilities. Somewhere pigeons flutter, somewhere cats stretch, but down below, brass arteries keep pulsing, never late, occasionally misbehaving, always hopeful. You fold your scorched postcard, tuck it beside the lavender letter, and decide both imperfections tell better stories than pristine pages ever could. Damp dawn air nips at your cheeks as you perch in a wicker basket dangling beneath a hydrogen balloon, its silk envelope glowing soft pink against the first sliver of sun over Montmartre. The ground crew shoves off, and the city of Paris, shuttered, ration-weary, surrounded by Prussian guns, shrinks into a toy box of slate roofs and smoke wisps. You clutch a cedar pigeon crate that coos and rattles like a sleepy tambourine. The birds are not amused by the altitude surcharge, with their disgruntled side-eye. Winged first class, complimentary view, peanuts absolutely not included. Settling your boots against sandbags, you watch the Seine coil through the besieged capital like a silver ribbon whose ends have been tied too tight. The year is 1870, and telegraph wires lie severed beyond the city walls, leaving Parisians cut off from the outside world, except for daring balloon flights out and daring pigeon flights back in. You, ever the restless postal tourist, have volunteered to escort today's homing squad to Tours, where government ministers have set up camp with ink bottles, anxious cigars, and a pigeon landing coat on the roof. The ascent is silent, save for a distant boom, Prussian artillery testing its morning voice. Your pilot, Captain Louvois, adjusts ballast and mutters about wind shear. You nod, mostly focused on the cargo jangling against your knees. Inside each slender metal tube, no bigger than a knitting needle, rests a single strip of micro-photograph dispatches, the latest battlefield reports, Senate decrees, and, rumour has it, a smuggled recipe for chestnut mousse that the foreign minister misses desperately. Mainstream fact glides in on a slipstream. Thanks to inventor René Dagron, whole newspapers are reduced onto collodion film the width of a postage stamp, then curled into goose quills tied to the pigeon's tail feathers. Up here, information weighs hardly more than hope. You reach cruising height, where clouds look like dollops of meringue, another reminder of rations now absent from Parisian patisseries. 6 pigeons share your ride, each blinking ruby eyes at the horizon, instinctively plotting invisible highways no human can read. Captain Louvois checks his pocket chronometer. If the wind cooperates, release will occur above the town of Vierzon. He hands you a tiny brass horn. "Give them a signal," he says, "but politely. They hate surprises." You consider practicing your best imitation of a sunflower seed, but opt for a dignified toot. The horn squeaks. Latches lift. Feathered bodies launch. They fan into a perfect chevron, vanish into sun-washed air. And for a breath you feel the sky inhale. Somewhere below, Prussian sentries aim carbines at specks they pray are worth the ammunition. Historians still argue whether enemy fire downed a dozen birds or barely dented the flock. But Paris newspapers later print heroic obituaries for every pigeon rumoured lost, complete with solemn eulogies, and, once, a poem that scanned poorly but made everyone cry anyway. Ballast jets hiss, the balloon drifts onward, and you lower yourself to sit cross-legged, letting ropes creak lullaby rhythms. Captain Louvois unwraps a contraband croissant, flaky, miraculous, passed along by a sympathetic baker, determined to keep morale laminated in butter. He splits it, hands you half. It tastes of flour, salt, and defiance. You toast him with invisible coffee, and feel the city far below send up a sigh of gratitude. Hours later, touchdown in Tours feels like stepping off a cloud into organised chaos. Couriers in kepis rush forward, arms out for the returning basket, no time for introductions. You follow them to the rooftop cote, a timber chalet painted Republican red. Within minutes the first pigeon swoops home, chest puffed like a tiny general. Clerks cheer, someone rings a dinner bell for effect, and a handler, thumb nimble as a watchmaker, extracts the microfilm, slides it into a magic lantern projector, and beams grainy text across a linen sheet. Ink blossoms under lantern light. Paris still resists, spirits high, send flour, ammunition, sheet music for morale. You jot the last line in your notebook. Perhaps Barnabas the cat might purr to a Paris waltz one night. Second pigeon arrives with a cinematic flourish, landing on the telegraph key itself as if to save a step. A clerk unrolls the strip, squints and smirks. The chestnut mousse recipe is real. 3 ingredients, endless comfort. Quirky tidbit secured. The message spreads through the office like cocoa aroma. You overhear a sergeant scheduling his first post-war dessert. But not every bird hits the mark. A scar-winged veteran named Marianne overshoots, circles thrice, and settles atop an artillery caisson, refusing to budge. An ensign climbs after her, slips on grease and mutters language just PG-13 enough to make the birds molt. You help by offering the remainder of your croissant. Marianne hops down, dignity preserved, dispatch intact. Inside the decoding chamber, debate ignites over one blurred communique. Some officers read Prussians mass west of St. Cloud, while others see Prussians feast west of St. Cloud. The difference is tactical, culinary, and colossal. Charts unroll, arguments simmer. Soy sauce serious versus bechamel bemused. You note the uncertainty in your margin. Historians still argue whether that particular blur cost anyone dinner or territory. Twilight pools across Tours, yet your day stretches. A fresh consignment of pigeons must return with replies. Strategic plans, morale-boosting jokes, and yes, a politely worded request for more croissants if possible. You assist in attaching new quills, this time containing crystal-clear negatives thanks to a faster bath in cyanide fixer. The lab chief swears it's perfectly safe, just don't sip. A gentle toss sends the birds skyward, silhouettes dissolving into indigo. They know the way. They always do. Standing on the parapet, you let the hush settle. A hush broken only by distant hoofbeats and the clack of telegraph relays spitting summaries to Marseille, Bordeaux, the world beyond siege lines. Paper may be fragile, pigeons may detour, but combined, they outwit wire cutters and artillery. You recall the pneumatic pipes below London and the velvet mailbags on Ethel's shoulders, different tools for the same ancient instinct to connect. Whether by claw, wing, or compressed air, messages insist on movement, in night, fog, or rebellion. Captain Louvois invites you back to the balloon for the return trip, but you decline. Tonight you wish to ride thoughts, not hydrogen. Campsites fill with lamplight. An accordion in the next street breathes a slow waltz. You spot a pigeon handler trimming a feather, humming softly, unaware he's crafting history between thumb and forefinger. You jot one last entry beside the lavender letter and scorched postcard. 6 December, Paris to Tours. Chestnut mousse en route. Exhaling, you feel the day's vibrations settle into your bones. Feathers, film, and flower now mingle in your memory, ready to drift through someone's dream, possibly yours, certainly your listeners. The sky bruises violet. A single bird wheels back, maybe double-checking the route, maybe just showing off. It banks north, catches a moonbeam, and becomes a silver hyphen between cities refusing silence. Seagulls scream like wound-up whistles above the Devon cliffs. Yet you stand steady on the headland, boots planted in windswept heather, a canvas satchel of letters bumping your hip. Somewhere inside lies the lavender-scented note, now carefully dried, and your scorch-edged postcard, both volunteering for tonight's grand experiment. Rocket mail. Horatio Garraway, flushed by pneumatic triumphs and feline frustrations, has dragged you here to meet Captain Zachary Blackstone, a former Royal Artillery rocketeer who believes nothing moves a message faster than controlled explosions. Blackstone claps your shoulder. "Nothing to it," he insists, gesturing at a row of stout Congreve rockets laid on trestles like silver salmon waiting to be smoked. Each steel casing hides a hollow brass tube packed with oil-skinned correspondence and pure optimism. When you spot the stenciled slogan, "Deliver or die trying," and suggest perhaps the motto could lose a word for customer reassurance. Twilight paints the channel pewter. Crewmen tamp gunpowder, fixing fins at jaunty angles meant to tame the famous Congreve wobble. Mainstream fact drifts in on the gusts. Sir William Congreve's rockets first howled over Copenhagen in 1807, lending the rocket's red glare to an American anthem. Their military resume is proven, their postal prospects entirely theoretical, until this salty evening. Garraway flutters about, stuffing extra stamps into his waistcoat, as though weight parity matters now. He hands you a brass powder horn shaped like a seahorse, Your task: pour exactly half a pound of propellant into each ignition trough. Half a pound, you ask. What if I sneeze? He winks. Either the world's shortest airmail or the loudest stamp cancellation. Captain Blackstone raises a green flag. A drummer boy, procured chiefly for ambience, beats a roll that vibrates in your chest. Fuses hiss, you step back, bracing against the wind. The first rocket roars aloft, tail spitting sparks, carving a golden arc over darkening water, then detonates 200 yards out, showering the waves with ember confetti. The crew cheers anyway. Partial success counts when expectations hover at sea level. The second rocket flies straighter, tracing a line toward a barge anchored offshore for recovery. It slips into the dusk. No boom, no splash, just hopeful silence. "We'll call that one delivered," Garraway declares, already drafting marketing copy in the fog of his breath. A crate of strong cider circulates while reloads are prepared. You sip, warmth trickling, and listen to Blackstone recount earlier trials. A prototype that looped back and singed the commanding officer's hat. A dud that landed intact in a sheep pasture, resulting in Britain's first ovine airmail interception. Quirky tidbit secured. The farmer, convinced the tube held secret cheese recipes, tried to ransom it to the Admiralty for 5 shillings. Third volley. 3 rockets at once. 2 veer apart like quarrelling siblings. The centre rocket holds course, sheds fiery scales, and thuds onto the barge with a thunk audible all the way back to your cliff. Lanterns wave. Success enough to embolden Blackstone, who sketches grand networks. Cornwall to Ireland in 10 minutes, England to France in 20. Historians still argue whether these cider-fueled projections were anything more than patriotic fireworks. Yet on this gusty promontory, they feel almost believable. Duty calls. You help tally casualties. Of 27 letters launched, 9 make the barge, 4 bob inside watertight tubes now drifting toward Brittany and the rest. Well, Neptune may finally learn who still owes rent in Shoreditch. Garraway asks if sea mail qualifies for a blue airmail sticker or a snorkel. Ledger in hand, you assist Miss Henrietta Prowse, a clerk who keeps peppermint drops, for shock victims. She offers one. It tastes like toothpaste but steadies nerves and, she claims, repels powder smoke. You slip an extra beside the lavender letter. Every saga deserves a minty subplot. Midnight glimmers along chalk stacks below. Gulls perch in ragged rows awaiting encore explosions. The final rocket is christened Ethel after the champion cat. You scribble a line on official notepaper. May your path be as sure as velvet paws. Slide it into the cylinder and pack a breadcrumb trail of luck. Fuse lit, the rocket shrieks skyward, curve elegant, unwavering. You hold your breath until starlight swallows the tail and the horizon remains calm. Somewhere beyond the dark, Ethel streaks toward destiny. Captain Blackstone doffs his cap. Even Garraway falls silent. In that hush, you sense a thread connecting every messenger. The cat leaping alley eaves, the pigeons slicing besieged skies, the capsule whispering under Fleet Street, and now this fiery comet stitching letters through constellations. Methods differ. The impulse endures. Cleanup reveals scorch marks, 2 cracked launch troughs, and an ink-black smear across Garraway's greatcoat that squeaks in protest each time you brush ash away. He laughs, real weary laughter, and vows to design parachute-tipped retrieval canisters at dawn. You foresee many herring-flavoured parachutes in his future. Back in a clifftop bothy, you pour steaming cocoa while Blackstone logs data by lamplight. He assigns each rocket a fate. Exploded gallantly, splash-landed valiantly, possibly orbiting Venus. Henrietta proposes spiral grooves inside casings, borrowing from rifle barrels. Garraway dreams of cardboard fins shaped like cat ears, for brand synergy. You arch a brow. He defends the aesthetic with a sales pitch already forming. Wrapped in a wool blanket, you listen to breakers soften into silk envelope rustles. Somewhere beyond the swell, maybe floating toward Roscoff, your cat-named rocket drifts intact. Letters dry, lavender perfume faint but present. Perhaps fishermen will haul it aboard and marvel at messages delivered by starlight. Perhaps it will beach itself where a child collects shells. Or perhaps it will join seabirds in legend, another postal myth to lull restless listeners. Either way, tonight you helped hurl words into the sky, trusting that gravity occasionally negotiates. You pocket a charcoal-smudged rocket fin, evidence that dreams require propellant and a good sense of humour. As eyelids fall, you picture ink swirling among constellations, writing stories across waves no blockade can silence. And even if few letters arrive, every launch widens the horizon. The next thing you know, the world is white noise and whiter landscape, snowflakes swirling like shredded telegrams, while 12 huskies surge in front of you, harness chains jingling a metallic lullaby that makes you forget rockets ever roared. You crouch on the runners of a sprucewood sled, fingers wrapped around a handlebar polished by frost and history, boots braced because brakes in this Arctic mail service are mostly wishful thinking. The musher, old Jack Icebeard McAllister, shouts hike, and the dogs explode forward, leaving a rooster tail of powder that tastes like frozen chalk. Somewhere in the sled's canvas hold, the lavender-scented letter slips against your scorched postcard and sighs, as if unsure why anybody thought perfume should endure -40 winds. The trail is a blue-scale ribbon snaking between spruce ghosts and granite crags. Icebeard hollers names, Blizzard, Comet, Fish Stealer, and every dog answers with a guttural rumble that sounds like a committee approving the agenda. Deliver 43 pounds of mail from Fort Yukon to the Circle Mining District before the aurora blots out the moon. When the lead dog, Fish Stealer, shoots you a side-eye that says he'll accept belly rubs only after receiving adequate salmon equity. You promise to draft a union contract once your pen thaws. Mainstream fact comes riding the cold. From the 1890s until small bush planes muscled in, the US Post Office paid mushers like Icebeard to run fixed dog teams across Alaska, some covering nearly 100 miles in a single coal-black night. Mailbags were wax-lined canvas, postage rates steady, and every musher carried a revolver more for wolves than robbers, because, as Icebeard chuckles, bandits are warmer in saloons, son. You lean into a turn that banks the sled so hard your hip kisses packed snow. Shards of ice prickle your ear, but the dogs hold the curve as smoothly as a pneumatic capsule negotiating Fleet Street junctions. Remember London's brass arteries? Imagine them stretched flat under starlight, pulled by pores instead of compressed air. The dog's breath crystallizes into plumes that trail like torch smoke, and the sled's runners sing a high whistle over glazed creek ice. For a moment, speed becomes silence, just the soft whoosh of pause and the texture of starlight on snow. Then, the trail tilts up a wind-scoured ridge and everything loud returns. Icebeard hops off, jogging beside the sled to lighten the load. You attempt to copy him, discover that sprinting in snowshoes feels like wading through damp mattresses, and quickly revert to dignified passenger mode. Icebeard grins beneath his glacier-rimmed moustache and says, "City folk run like drunken penguins, best sit tight." You oblige, gripping the handlebar so hard frost fuses thumb to wood. A quick tug breaks the bond with an oddly satisfying pop. Quirky tidbit rattles loose when Icebeard explains his improvised dog booties. Sliced up flour sacks smeared with moose tallow to keep snow from balling between toes. He claims the dogs prefer the subtle aroma of bread dough and will pace faster if promised actual biscuits at the next roadhouse. Indeed, every time he shouts biscuit, the team surges as though powered by yeast. Dusk creeps in like ink spilled across parchment. Violet shadows pool in the sled's wake. The temperature drops again, a dry cold that crunches nostril hairs like brittle wires. You reach for your fountain pen to jot impressions, only to watch ink freeze mid-flow, forming a miniature sculpture, the shape of your own sentence. If correspondence froze in London, the cats would simply bat it like a toy. A flicker on the northern horizon, green curtains rippling, the aurora borealis unfurls, giant and hushed, smearing emerald feathers across a sky still bruised dark from twilight. Dogs glance up but press on. They've seen the sky doodle before. Historians still argue whether the famous 1903 Greenfire night spooked an entire mail relay into abandoning bags at Eagle River, yet Icebeard insists his grandfather kept going, because auroras don't pay postage. We crest a ridge and get our first look at Circle. 50 cabins dotting a frozen bend of the Yukon River, lantern light flickering like guarded secrets. Smoke from wood stoves rises straight, no wind a mercy. As we descend, you hear the miners' arguments even before the sled stops. Whose claim overlaps whose, how much gold dust weighs a cup of coffee, and whether Saturday actually exists when daylight lasts 3 hours. Tonight they'll add fresh fodder, a burlap sack of letters swaddled in oilskin and dog scent. Icebeard calls woe dogs plant paws, tails wagging slow victory banners. The postmaster, Ms. Hattie Two-Stamp Kincaid, strides out in a beaver fur parka, wielding an iron ledger. She counts bags by lantern light, initials each tag, and slides a peppermint into your mitten for chill shock. Cousin to Henrietta's Devon drops. You inspect the sled for stragglers. No loose postcards, though Fish Stealer eyes your pocket as if aware of lavender aromas. Inside the log post office, frost crystals fringe window panes like lace stolen from a pneumatic tube misadventure. Hattie sorts mail atop a pot-bellied stove, invoices, love notes, a requisition for blasting powder, and 3 tattered copies of Harper's Weekly. Your scorched postcard gets a stamp for onward travel to Nome, joining a stack bound by rawhide. The lavender letter she sets aside, sniffing faintly, raising an eyebrow. You mumble, long story, and earn a knowing grin. As dogs gnaw frozen salmon heads, you help stoke the stove and watch ink resurrect in warmth. Miners tramp in, cheeks raw, trading gold flakes for postage, currency melted, weighed and sprinkled like glitter over Hattie's scales. Calls of, "Any rockets tonight?" draw laughter. Word of Congreve couriers has travelled even here, where skyfire is common. You spin the tale of Ethel the Rocket, sparks painting the channel, and the crowd hoots until beards shake frost-free. Somewhere a fiddle strikes up a reel. Hefted mugs clink like small anvils. Later, bed is a bunk over the sorting table. You fall asleep amid comforting smells. Pine smoke, wet dog, envelope glue. Dreams braid cats leaping lamplit eaves, with pigeons threading cannon smoke, and rockets etching silver over black seas, then huskies galloping beneath aurora sheets, every pawprint spelling messages no ink could hold. Perhaps tomorrow brings steamships or Morse code, or whispering radio waves. Tonight the trail's rhythm lodges in your heartbeat, constant, devoted, undeterred by darkness. Salt-stun wind touses your hair as the side-wheeled packet steamer, Celestine, thumps eastward out of Plymouth Sound, boiler pistons thudding like an impatient heartbeat. You lean on the teak rail beside a red-painted keg emblazoned, floating mail, tougher than salt spray. Inside, bundles of letters, some still smelling faintly of lavender, others singed at the corners by rocket backfire, await their oceanic relay. The plan is delightfully eccentric. Heave these watertight canisters overboard, near remote headlands, where lighthouse keepers will fish them out with boat hooks, dry the envelopes by stove, and forward them inland. No need for cats, pigeons, or gunpowder, just tides and faith. Chief Postman, Silas Seacrate Morland, a walrus-moustached veteran of coastal mail runs, briefs you while knotting a tarred rope. Tide's our engine now, he declares, and if the gulls feel charitable, we get receipts. You arch a brow at that last bit. Morland explains that a natural history society on the Isle of Lundy once tried training great black-backed gulls to ferry acknowledgement slips back to the ship. When you imagine a bird stamping "delivered" with its beak, then invoicing you in herring. Steam whistles shriek. The deck crew hauls the first keg onto a tipping cradle. Morland scribbles today's date on a cork float, adds a cheery, "mind the damp," and nods. With a creak and splash, the barrel drops, bobbing astern like a wooden cork in a cup of tea, quickly swallowed by rolling swells. You watch until it disappears behind a froth-topped ridge, hoping some keeper's lantern will soon gleam on its brass hoops. Mainstream fact surfaces with the swell. Beginning in the 1890s, British coastal packets really did practice seapost transfers, tossing sealed casks toward isolated lighthouses such as Eddystone or Skerryvore, where keepers retrieved, stamped and forwarded the mail, an aquatic cousin to the American railway postbag snatch. The Celestine settles into her rhythm. A horse puff every 6 seconds, paddle wheels slapping water into gull-tempting spray. Galley smells of briny stew waft up the companionway. Somewhere below, a donkey boiler hisses like London's pneumatic pipes, but with more attitude. Morland invites you to the sorting salon, a cramped cabin where clerks brace knees against brass rails while cancelling stamps between lurches. Your lavender letter rides in a special oilskin wallet labelled hybrid, land, sea, who knows where. The scorched postcard gets an extra wax seal, just in case Neptune likes souvenirs. A whistle topside, second drop zone. Crewmen lug 2 smaller kegs to the bulwark and lash on canvas sails designed to catch prevailing current toward Bishop Rock Lighthouse. When the quartermaster complains the mini sails look like toddler bloomers flapping indecently in public, the kegs plop overboard. Bloomers billow. Everyone applauds the improvised fashion show. Late afternoon light turns pewter. On the outer deck you meet Dr. Hester Blythe, an ornithologist armed with leather gloves and sardine tins. She gestures skyward, where a dozen gulls wheel expectantly. "We're attempting a return receipt experiment," she explains, dangling a small cork-bound postcard coated in bait oil. The theory: gull grabs card, spies lighthouse lamp, and keeper's biscuit tin, drops payload onto the gallery, and receives crumbs in gratitude. You volunteer a sardine-fingered toss. A bold gull snatches the card mid-air, then circles suspiciously, as though remembering the infamous cat coalition back in London, and finally beats a path toward the distant granite tower. Success? Perhaps. Historians still argue whether any gull ever completed the route, or merely swapped postcards for crusts at seaside picnics. Evening fog creeps in, muffling the paddle clatter until the world feels padded, dreamlike. Lanterns swing from deck beams. Their glow paints halos on vapour, reminding you of Ethel the cat rocket's fiery arc. You share that tale with Dr. Blythe. She laughs so brightly the gulls squawk in reply. Quirky tidbit arrives on a silver tray at supper. The chief steward recounts how certain lighthouse keepers, annoyed by barrel deliveries that arrive during storms, installed miniature cannon to fire blank salutes at passing mail steamers, returned to sender with gusto. One keg reputedly ricocheted off a cliff and was later discovered by a seal colony chewed open, letters redistributed as nesting material. The steward swears he owns a stamp still bearing tiny tooth marks. Night deepens. The Celestine veers toward a calm cove off Start Point for her final dispatch. Moreland fits a pigeon-sized brass capsule to a hulking herring gull named Admiral Pexa Plenty, graduate of Blythe's dubious training program. The bird flaps onto the rail, eyeing the capsule like an overdue library fine. With ceremonial gravitas, you recite a blessing involving fair winds and minimal digestive incidents. Admiral Pex bows, or maybe adjusts balance, and launches into the dark. When Moreland wagers a shilling, the gull delivers the cylinder, only if paid up front in chips. Past midnight, you lean against a lifeboat davit and feel vibration through planking. The relentless churn of steam and wave, machines and nature collaborating just enough to stay interesting. Somewhere astern, barrels drift toward lighthouse lanterns, letters knock politely inside, and maybe, just maybe, a sardine-scented postcard hurtles Gull Express back through the damp. A clerk joins you, puffing a pipe that smells of cedar and kelp. He calculates that today's floating mail may shave 2 days off land carriage around Cornwall. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. He reminds you that progress often looks like a wooden barrel, bobbing alone at night, carrying words no louder than candle scratches. You nod, recalling smoked herring trails for rooftop cats, and cyanide-fixed microfilm on pigeon tails. Different stages, same stubborn chorus. Let them know I'm thinking of them. The fog thins, stars prick through. Paddle beats slow as boilers ease. The ship glides while engineers scoop ash. You pocket a cork float stamped FM 97, souvenir of the second drop, and tuck it with your growing relic collection, herring crumbs, pigeon feathers, rocket fin soot. Your satchel jingles history's odd toolkit, proof that even half-successful experiments earn bedtime tales. Below, bunks creak with dozing clerks. You settle into a canvas hammock strung between pigeon crates and coil of spare line, lulled by the hiss-thump cadence. Thoughts drift to tomorrow's landfall, another sorting office, another improbable scheme awaiting your curiosity, rumours of wireless sparks leaping between coastal cliffs. But that can wait. For now, imagine lighthouse keepers lifting barrels from moonlit swells, steam rising off enamel teapots as they peel wax seals. Read letters aloud to gulls perched on railings. Somewhere in that chorus, your lavender letter sighs again, grateful for any road that points home, even one that floats. Steam whistles fade behind you as the train from Cornwall rattles into Paddington, and by dawn you are back where the entire escapade began, among London's chimney pots and restless pigeons, with your satchel now clinking like a curiosity cabinet. You climb the narrow stair to Garraway's office, ease open the door, and find the inventor asleep across his drafting table, beard tangled in blueprints of cat-eared rocket fins. You clear your throat. He startles upright, scattering ink blots that resemble miniature constellations. "Ah," he beams, "my ambassador of experimental postage returns." You unload the evidence. A smoked herring tin, flattened by feline sabotage, a pigeon tail feather, still laced with microfilm glue, a cork float from floating mail, smelling briny, a soot-dust rocket fin shaped like Ethel's ear, and, finally, the lavender-scented letter. Edges frayed, stamp browned by Arctic breath yet miraculously intact. Garraway inhales the aroma and sighs as if it were proof that optimism has a perfume all its own. Together, you pin a map to the wall and trace every route you have ridden: rooftop mazes, Belgian fish markets, brass pneumatic arteries, pigeon skyways, rocket parabolas, sled trails glowing with aurora, sea mail barrels. The lines intersect like threads in a quilt. Where they cross, you thumbtack relics, each tack a heartbeat in the great circulatory system of human connection. You step back, tilt your head, and realize the plot looks uncannily like a sleeping cat curled around a globe. Garraway applauds your accidental cartographic pun. Mainstream fact settles into the conversation. By the early 20th century, the British Post Office had indeed woven an empire-wide lattice of rail, ship, dog team and, eventually, airplane routes capable of moving a postcard from London to Delhi in under 2 weeks. A marvel for an age still lighting streets with gas, yet each polished cog traces back to prototypes you have witnessed. Cats testing rooftop shortcuts, pigeons daring bullets, rockets flirting with Neptune. Morning light warms the frosted panes. Garraway fetches 2 dented tin mugs of tea so strong the spoon stands upright. "Postal porter," he jokes. You clink mugs, then leaf through the ledger of prior night's data. Some entries read like punchlines, barrel intercepted by seal, others like poetry, pigeon silver hyphen in moonlight. Historians still argue whether such fringe trials truly nudged mainstream logistics forward or merely provided Victorian newspapers with comic relief, but you suspect influence often hides in laughter before it marches into policy. You post the lavender letter at last, sliding it into a gleaming wall box newly installed beside Garraway's door. The brass flap snaps shut with a tidy click that feels ceremonial. Where it will travel you cannot say, but its journey already spans more legends than most stamps see in a lifetime. Outside, you stroll past St. Martin's Le Grand headquarters, watching uniformed carriers sort bundles onto horse-drawn carts. No feline patrols those rooftops now, but a sleek telegraph wire hums overhead, its faint buzz, like a pigeon's heartbeat, encoded in copper. In 6 months, engineers whisper, Marconi's wireless will crackle across the channel. Within a decade, the first airmail biplanes will sputter out of Hendon. Joke 2 arrives when you imagine Garraway fitting velvet mailbags onto propellers, for brand continuity. At Ludgate Circus, you duck into a tobacconist's shop where a display trumpets rocket post, toffee tins painted with star-streaked envelopes. You grin at the marketing echo, proof that even partial success can kindle popular myth. The shopkeeper admits he has never seen an actual rocket deliver a bill, but the tins sell faster than peppermint drops. Quirky tidbit confirmed. Victorian souvenir culture monetizes anything that sounds slightly explosive. You wander toward the river. Barges unload crates bearing stenciled gull logos. Dr. Blythe's return receipt program has evidently found a sponsor. Dockhands take wagers on whether gulls or barrels will prove steadier couriers. Odds favour whichever keeps the fish. Joke 3 rides a gull's shriek overhead, punctuating the bet. Crossing Blackfriars Bridge, you spot a familiar ginger tail atop the parapet. Barnabas, velvet bag slung pridefully, now serving as honorary mascot for a children's postal club. He recognises you, perhaps by herring scent, and butts your knee. A girl in a sailor dress explains they run kittengrams along the embankment, delivering comic sketches between street performers. Innovation, it appears, scales from empires down to pocket money. By twilight, you return to the Warehouse Academy, now repurposed into a museum of odd deliveries. Visitors wander past cages of retired pigeons, stroke padded rocket fins, and peek into a working pneumatic demo that woos letters through transparent tubes with a whoosh like a lullaby. Garraway leads nightly tours, his squeaky greatcoat now a badge of honour rather than a fashion oddity. He invites you to give the closing talk. You clear your throat, inhale the dusty sweet air, and tell the small crowd that connection is humanity's second heartbeat. Quiet, insistent, occasionally ridiculous, yet always finding a way. Before bed, you climb the roof one last time. The Thames glimmers under steel blue sky. Somewhere in this great sprawl, a sorting clerk stamps the lavender letter's passport. Somewhere farther, a husky team skims frost, a rocket tube rusts. So now, dear traveller, let the night settle. Picture the rooftops emptying of all bustle. The last cat curling into a comma atop a warm chimney pot, purring the city towards softness. Imagine distant pigeons folding wings as lamps gutter low, their little cargoes already tucked into waiting hands far below. Feel the heavy hush of the underground tubes easing their breath, valves loosening, brass skins cooling under quiet brick arches. Far away, sled dogs have finished their trot. They sleep in crescents, paws twitching through dreams of aurora that dance like slow green curtains across their closed eyes. Even out on the salt dark, barrels bob gently. Each swell a cradle rocking paper voices toward lighthouse keepers, who themselves nod beside glowing stoves. Everything that needed to move has moved. Everything that needed to be said now drifts patiently toward understanding. Allow that rhythm to seep into your own bones, the measured pulse of paw, wing, wheel and wave, repeating somewhere just beyond your hearing. Thoughts flatten like calm water. Words stretch into longer, lazier shapes, and sentences meander the way a river widens before meeting the sea. With every breath, feel the weight of blankets anchor you, the way ballast steadies a balloon, safe and sure even as dreams begin to lift. There is no schedule here, no urgent stamp to punch, only the slow assurance that messages will arrive in their own good hour, borne by the quiet devotion of wind, fur, feather and tide. Let eyelids swing closed like the final postbox hatch, sealing away the day. Somewhere in that comfortable darkness, may a gentle whisper reach you, all is delivered, all is well.